Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dodgeball podcast. In this episode, we're going to cover the West Coast Series Round 1 tournament that took place in LA this past weekend. And with so much to cover and discuss, here to help me out for part 1 at least is Serge Ferrari from Rise of Brutality. Should be no stranger to the Dodgeball community. Serge, thank you so much for hopping on and being willing to lend your thoughts, man. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, Steve. The pleasure is mine. I love what you're doing. Keep doing it, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, yeah, for sure, man. Wow. Elite 1 in the books, or West Coast. Is it West Coast or is it West? Is it West now?
I think they just call it
the West region.
Yeah, West region.
Yeah.
I like West Coast.
Yeah, it's the West region round 1, so it's time for me to get with the times. But I mean, this is like my first West one. My first one ever. I've never been able to make it to a March one, so I'm really happy to have been able to take part and kind of see this through the beginning. I usually come in through towards the end. So what? And this is kind of a loaded question, but what are your thoughts overall just on the event? Like, are you still sore? Are you still recovering? Did it live up to your expectations? Kind of weird to dive in, but let's just get right into it.
I think it was a great event. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have a good memory for these kind of things, but if I'm not mistaken, I think this was one of the bigger regional tournaments we've had. There were 20 teams for open, 27 teams for co-ed, and I think 17 teams for women's.
Wow! And
so it was a really big tournament. And considering the size, I think that everything ran very smoothly. The gym was very nice. It was set up on, I think, 9 courts. Is that right, Steve?
3, 6, yeah, 9 courts.
The 9 courts, so it certainly accommodated the size of the tournament, and so that's always a good thing. There's always this tension, the old dialectic between quantity and quality, and so I think that you're always concerned about having too many teams because then that takes away from the amount of games teams play. But Mark was able to do it right and getting a gym that accommodated so many teams, and so we ended up playing a lot, and it was overall a really good tournament.
Yeah, and what a gym too, by the way. It was you and me, we played through, you name it, from dilapidated, falling apart gyms to, we can just go through all the gyms out there, but this one felt just everything about this elite just felt like everything is stepped up. The gym was amazing. The facility was great. There's, it's gonna sound petty, but there was adequate parking. There was plenty of space. You had a whole entire other gym to dedicate to putting all of our stuff in. We had like a kind of security guard there, kind of monitoring the event.
Right.
It was just so awesome.
And it was great to see all of the Rise stickers all over the gym.
Yeah, I'm sure you appreciated that.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think I was like they had some kind of motto, and Rise was it was like a key word in the motto, and so everywhere I turned I would see Rise, and it was just bring a big smile to my face.
Yeah, I'll bet.
But all those, in all seriousness, all those things that you mentioned were really good points about this gym. I think it was a great gym. The only critique I would have is that it wasn't so GoPro friendly. And this being my first gym with a GoPro, I was really bummed that I wasn't able to use it. but I think people figured out how to work it nonetheless, and captured some good footage. So all in all, I would say it's a great gym.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny just to open up, a recap talking about the gym, because again, just going back to how far Elite's come from. For me, it was like the first, it was 2013, April, and I forget which gym it was, but it was one that's constantly used in LA. And it's not a bad gym. It's just to go from that to this one, like, holy crap. And then to go from maybe 14, 12 teams or so to 20, and you said 27 in co-ed. It almost felt like a national event for me. It just because there's just so much going on and so many courts, and I'm still blown away by how much has changed for the better, and it was just incredible. Have you recovered from the event? Are you still sore, or?
Mark's gonna hate me in saying this, but I don't usually get too sore after after the tournament, Steve. In all seriousness, in all honesty, my legs get a little tight, but I think since I'm one of the guys who is always running the entire time, it's just something I've gotten used to over the years, and maybe since I've been doing it for so many years. But I'm not too sore, and so yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do another tournament
for another one.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I went to our foam league on Tuesday night, and I mean, not that I'm great at foam anyway. I think it's a running joke about how bad I am, but just the desire to move, or at least attempt to dodge the way I could have during the weekend, was just not there. I was like, my body's just like, I don't even know why you're here, man. Just stop. Like you need a couple more days to recover. But I guess that's a testament to your overwell conditioning and the fact that you've been doing this for so long. So it's kind of cool to hear that you're not sore. Yeah, it just gives me hope to get in better condition. But
I'm not on wood now since you're repeating, since we're talking about it out loud. but no, there was a lot of play time, and so I was really happy that we got to play so many teams and play for so long, and not sort of negotiate the play time because of how many teams we've had. So it was great. It was a really good tournament.
Yeah, and I think so. We had a round robin for open was cut short, wasn't it? Was that, or was it co-ed?
No, it was open.
It was open.
Yeah, I think it was cut short a few rounds. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the schedule sort of ambitiously set up more rounds than we normally play.
Right.
And so I didn't notice much in terms of play time
being taken away or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, it's so funny because this isn't the first time round robin play was cut short, but it wasn't, at least for me, I wasn't upset about it. Like I was partially like, oh dang, we don't get to play against these teams, but at the same time, like I was ready to go into bracket play because we still had a whole nother division left to go. And so I guess just from experience of knowing what it's like when the finals are consolidated and you have to like have a winner within 5 minutes or so, and you have those time constraints to deal with, I'd rather take away from round robin play, especially after we've got 8 or 10 games in at the intensity that each team is providing. So I really didn't see that as a big deal. And it's good to just kind of take away from round robin versus, the back end. So it was still a lot of dodgeball all the same.
Yep, I agree 100%.
I was kind of looking. Oh, go ahead.
Good. I just said good job, Mark. You did good.
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say major shout out to Mark and Glenn and Vince, and then it looked like per Tyler's article here, shout out to Brendan Tickner for just all those guys making this happen. And it was said that this was the best run elite tournament to date. And from a West Coast perspective, I agree. Like the bar keeps getting set up higher and higher. And you can probably attest to this. The NDL would say the same thing, right? Like this was the best DWC to date. Right. But they would just the bar would be set so low. It wasn't like you were trying to do much to make that happen. So it's for me that saying this is the best run tournament to date, it means it. And I just know that next one's going to be that much better and so on and so forth. So very exciting stuff.
And you know what? I think one thing that contributed to that, in addition to the effort of all of those people you mentioned, is what David Tetz mentioned on Facebook. I think he had a really good post that highlighted how the new reffing system worked very well, and I agree with him. I think I was one of the refs for my team assigned. It was Tyler and I who had to ref for the entire tournament, and it was good knowing exactly when we had to ref on what court. And overall, I feel like the system just contributed to the tournament running so efficiently, and so I'm happy that this is something that we're going to be doing now into the future, and something, at least for me, that is a welcome development for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because I reffed for my team for Grit, and so I always knew, thanks to Ons letting us know where to be, when to be there, and even for how long. So like, I even got like my fair share of breaks. Like, it wasn't like I was reffing or playing. It wasn't one or the other. It was I'm going to ref this round, and I got this round off, and then we're playing these next 2 rounds, and so it just felt like a really good balance, but also just felt like order. Like, it wasn't me just picking up my whistle and seeing what court needed me. It was, no, I'm going to be here, so I can camp out and be ready. And that was awesome. That's a good thing to point out. Was that kind of the same with you?
Very structured. Something that we definitely like.
Yeah, structure.
Yeah.
What did you think of that ref test?
I liked it.
You did?
I liked it. Yeah. There was one question that I got stuck on, and I'll admit I did pull up my notes and looked it up. It was the catch and out question, the one about jumping in the air and catching a ball and then being hit by another ball that hits the ground before you actually land. And my instinct was to answer that the player would have not made a successful catch because the other ball deemed him or her dead before actually completing the catch. But then something about the wording of the question made me question myself.
Right.
And I really looked it up in the rule, and I found that I was indeed wrong. So I ended up answering it correctly, but my initial thought was wrong.
Huh.
But in general, I liked it. I think the questions were very good. I think they highlighted those key points that most people have questions on. And yeah, I tip my hats to those guys who work so hard in putting those things together.
Yeah, it was I won't say intense. I always say intense, but it was very thorough. And when it was announced that you had each team had to produce 2 refs already, mm-hmm. That was like, oh wow, they're taking this very seriously this year. When it was announced that these refs would be compensated, they'd get their money back or whatever the amount is, it's like, oh wow, so this is a great way to make sure that they actually do stick with it, other than making it a requirement. And then the referee test came out. I was like, oh, holy crap, they're not playing around. Like, this is going to be the standard from now on. And I don't want to allude to what my score was, but I definitely needed to reread the rules a few times.
Uh-huh.
And I felt like that was awesome. I mean, we're always, you're always going to complain about the refs missing a call, and there's just some that you can't help. They're just going to be questionable regardless of what you can do. But for those things that you can help, that's definitely just another huge step forward, and it's just really awesome. I mean, it definitely takes some time to study, but at the same time, you're technically getting paid for it, so you don't really have room to complain about doing the extra work. So that was just an awesome addition as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's only going to get better, I feel like because we're taking this reffing system into consideration so seriously, it's gonna transfer into the games, into the quality of the games. You're gonna have better refs that know the rules very well, that are excited about doing it. It's gonna sort of weed out the weak, I guess, for lack of a better expression. Those people who don't really want to ref but are forced to, and so they sort of already approach the task with not the most excited sort of opinion about it. And now with the system in place, you have the people that really do want to do it, take it more seriously, and I think it's gonna, like I said, end up increasing the quality of the matches from a ref point of view.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I got there's this one question where it's like, when you're reffing, should you be talking to somebody? Should you be on your phone? Should you XYZ? Right. I was like, that's a stupid question. Of course not. Like, what kind of idiot would be doing that? And then, unfortunately, there was this one situation where there was a play that I was watching, but Joe, I think, was talking to me, and I knew, like, okay, this has to stop. Like, I know sometimes I'll banter back and forth because we're playing dodgeball, we're excited to see each other, we want to socialize just a little bit.
Right.
But I just remember that question. It's like, oh man, you better not be a hypocrite now. You got to tell Joe you can't talk. You got to, focus on
Yeah.
the game. Even though you think you're focusing, you got to stop. And so it's.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. But yeah, it's something to think about. We want to take this to the next level, and those the nuances are what matter.
For sure. So speaking on nuances and taking things to the next level, long sleeve jerseys, they're becoming more popular, I feel. My team, both Grid and both Abyss, had long sleeves, and now I'm a believer. What are your thoughts on those? Like, Rise, do you guys have the option for long sleeves, or is it just short sleeve and that's it?
No, just the short sleeve. I mean, aesthetically, if you want my opinion, I'm not a fan. You're just making me hot, by looking at you. So it's just, I don't know. I can't really say so much about it. I have no experience to speak from. So maybe you can tell me how it worked for you. Did you find yourself being too hot throughout the day, or do you feel like it keeps you warm and loose?
I didn't feel any hotter than I normally would have. And I don't know if that's just because I didn't play as intensely, or I spent more time in the queue than on the actual court, or what it could have been. But I would have thought the same thing. I would have thought I'm going to burn up and die in one of those things.
Right.
But maybe it was like the type of material that was used, but I just felt cool and normal. And the only issue I had was I didn't get to wear my throwing brace underneath, but I didn't have to. So it may take a couple more reps to find out if it does impact you. But I dig them. I think they look cool, and I don't think they impact the way I play at all. And I don't know if that's the same for other people. But for some reason, visually, at least in my opinion, they look pretty dang sharp. So
yeah, I guess I kind of feel like an old timer here. Like that sort of traditional grandpa. Just kind of complaining about change.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, if there's one person that hates change, it's me. So.
No, but who knows? Maybe you'll see Rise with long sleeve shirts next year. If I get outvoted, that will certainly be the case.
That'd be hilarious. I'll have to remember this conversation if that's the case. So let's go into the teams a little bit. Open division, it was. You had the predictions. It was, Doom and Rise top 2, and then Titan as 3, and then 4. I think Rainbows might have been projected. I'd have to look at the specific post, but not the case. I mean, what went down?
So yeah, it was a very interesting turnout. The top 2 teams was more conventional, more sort of as it has been in the past. Doom finished in first place, and Rise of Brutality, my team, finished in second place. But everything below was somewhat shocking. Gridlock, props to them, ended up in third place, and they had an exceptional showing. In my opinion, maybe one of the best showings of all of the teams there. When we played them in, I think it was the finals of the losers bracket. The losers, So is that how you call it? The finals of the losers. So before you go and play the undefeated team in the winners.
Yeah, I mean, it's the losers bracket. So
yeah, the finals of the losers bracket, right? So that's when we played them. And they had a new strategy. I couldn't really figure it out, but it was pretty tough to match up against. And so I was really excited to see them, turn it up a notch and come out with something new. And they're a real cerebral team, and so it's something that is expected from them. But yeah, I was really excited to see them play and do so well. I think they got knocked into. So I'm looking at the bracket now. Gridlock got knocked into the losers bracket in the second round against Titan, and then they fought their way through the losers bracket to match up in the finals of the losers against us. but before that, winning a total of 6 games in the losers bracket.
Wow.
Again, against some pretty big names. And so I was really happy to see what they were able to do at that tournament. So that was one of the unexpected developments. The second one that I would say is I think Arsenal also had a really good showing. They were the 7th seed. I'm looking here again at the bracket. They were the 7th seed going into bracket play, but finished in 4th place, which is great. So I was really happy to see what they did. Let's see exactly who they played. I think they beat Riot in the first match, and then we knocked them into the losers bracket. But in the losers bracket, they also had an exceptional climb, beating Grit, your team, Steve.
Yeah, I remember that. That was
Yeah.
that was a good fight. Like, I felt, because we lost 2-1, so it wasn't a shutout. And then that last game, if memory serves me correctly, there was just a really good catch on their end that brought Jaril back in. And I don't know if this is new to me, but I have not seen him tee off more than I have this past weekend. Like, he was just murdering people. And so I took it upon myself to take him out as fast as I could, and we both made an exchange, and I thought, okay, I took out their worst threat.
You're talking about Jarrell, right?
Yeah, Jarrell. I'm sorry. Jarrell. I'm so sorry. Jarrell. And but when he got back in there, he finished us off, and but I don't know what he's doing, but he's throwing a lot harder, and he seems a lot more aggressive than I remember. So when I saw that Arsenal, ended up taking 4th, I didn't feel so bad. It's better to, lose to a team that's going to go far and completely dominate the rest of the teams as they progress upwards than losing to, a team that, may not have placed so high or got completely shut out. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think they were on their A game. They after winning that match against you guys, they beat Titan. Which was a huge match, and then they went on to beat Havoc, another big match, finally losing to Gridlock, who again was also on their A game. So that was another unexpected development. And then I would say that Fortune. So Fortune was another surprise. This is Lucas's new team from Seattle,
right?
And they did exceptionally well. They tied for 5th place with Havoc, and they were able to beat, if I'm not mistaken, I think Lucas's team was able to beat Rainbows. Let's take a look at the bracket very quickly. I can't find them here, but I think they also had a pretty exceptional route to get to that place and played some pretty big names. So props to them. And then finally, I would say that Tuda also had a really good showing. This is I think this is their first elite. They played at Tyler's tournament. What's the name of that? What was the name of that tournament? The Tribune, right?
Yeah, the Tribune.
So they played at the Tribune and did very well there, as expected, because they do come from sort of a no-sting background, and then, in my opinion, that sort of translates more with the foam. But everyone was kind of waiting around to see exactly what they were able to do with 8.5, and they did well. They tied for 7th place with Titan. So I think that's a really good showing for their first elite tournament.
I would say so. I mean, if you can tie with Titan, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I really liked what how Tyler put this in the article. It said, while the Open Division Finals match was a familiar chapter in the Doom Rise rivalry, the rest of the tournament was a good preview of the dogfight that the West has become. The region is no longer just about Doom and Rise. And while you guys, were top 2, obviously, and you battled it out for the championship again, the rest of the slots, 3rd through what have you, I feel like they're still up for grabs. Like, you would, again, expect Titan or Rainbows to be, and I think maybe it was Gridlock that would get top 5. That would kind of just be, just a typical day. But that's not the case anymore. So it's really cool to see new teams like Tuda come out and Arsenal step up and Gridlock, come in swinging. And it's just really exciting, because now it's like, who's going to give Doom and Rise a run for their money now? So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of new teams with a lot of potential. And, I just really hope that they stick around so that they have the time to, develop that chemistry. And I think, come, the end of the season, they're gonna, be some big time competitors. That's for sure. Interestingly, though, despite a lot of the hype surrounding the new blood, you'll notice that the top 4 teams are among some of the oldest blood of the elite. Doom and Rise, obviously, but Gridlock, and then also Arsenal. So that was kind of an interesting observation that I had as well.
That's true.
Gridlock and Rise being the 2 oldest teams of the elite, the only of the original 8. And so that was kind of interesting. But everything below was just kind of up for grabs, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I really do think Fortune and Tuda are going to be some heavy hitters moving forward. And I also do think, despite not the best showing in this particular tournament, I think Heat also has something, has something else to show. I think maybe they just had a rough tournament this round. But if they stick it out, I think they're going to be a top contender as well, and some of the other teams as well. I mean, all in all, I think, as Tyler's article mentioned, it's going to be a dogfight. I agree with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to put it. And with respect to Heat, I mean, if they can take their no sting and foam skills and hone those into 8.5, they're going to be a very scary team. Yeah. I watched Isidro catch just phenomenal balls yesterday or on Tuesday during foam, and I was like, man, if you catch 8.5 balls like that one day, like, you're just gonna hurt a lot of people's feelings. Like, it's incredible how well they can play. So I would think, kind of like what you said earlier, if these teams can stick together, take the next couple weeks or the next month or so and practice, I think you would see a lot of the same dogfighting, but it would just be more like just sharper, if that makes sense. Like less mistakes and more, grinding the other team down until that big breakout play happens. But it'll just continue to be far more and more fierce.
That's what it comes. I think you hit it right. You hit the nail right on the head, Steve. I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I mean, these teams have great talent. There's no question about it. I mean, some of these teams have players that are just throwing heat, just and have great hands, and just in general are just really great athletes. But at the end of the day, it comes down to making very few mistakes and knowing how to play, with the players on your team, having that chemistry, knowing what, player X is going to do and when he's going to do it or when she's going to do it, and sort of, being able to play off each other very well. And so, I think that's the key ingredient that may be missing. But, the more we play, the longer they stick around, the more competitive and up in the air everything's going to be. I don't think it's going to be, the familiar Doom and Rise story that we've had for several years now. I think it's going to change.
Yeah.
So that's great. That's something that I think is very exciting and a positive turn for the sport in general.
So that kind of brought up like a potentially interesting point, and that's, I was just going to ask you, why do you think it's always Rise and Doom? Like, why is that? But then as I was asking that mentally, I just remembered, well, look at the roster. Look at the fact that they've been the same consistent core group with like 1 or 2 changes here and there throughout the years, and that's it. So like, yeah, you guys practice all the time, you guys play together more. That might be why, because if you look at Gridlock, they also have a pretty consistent roster. I don't know if there's anybody new that's been added other than Nate Evans, who was a 7th player. So when I played with Gridlock in July, I was like a temporary fill-in. They were a very cohesive unit, and I think the only player that they had missed was Tillmans, because he had retired. And then they had Kale, who was out because he was, I think he was recovering from an injury. But obviously he made a huge difference, I would say. And then Marcus Westbrook, who I think he may have earned the Open Division MVP, also stood out. But then you just have the same guys that are lining up with you time in and again. So it makes sense that they would have a better showing than some of the newer teams or some of the teams that are making more of these like roster switches, because you guys have had more time on the court together versus showing up on day one. This is maybe your first time playing with a brand new team or with half a new roster. so you have to kind of get the kinks out, but you're using the actual tournament to do so. So I wonder if that's why we always see Rise and Doom as, duking it out for the championship, and that's why it's like the same old story.
I think that's a big factor. We have a strategy, we have plays, and I'm sure other teams do as well. Teams that have been around for a while, and as long as you can get everyone to buy into it, and everyone is operating as a unit, and you don't have individual superstars that want to go and do it all themselves and throws everything off tilt. I think that's, at least for us, that has been our secret. Right. We buy in to the strategy and then to the specific plays that we practice. And my suspicion is that a lot of these other teams who have been around for a long time as well also do that. So the secret is, I guess, at the end of the day, time, right? Time and being able to, understand that it's a team sport and that you need to play with the other players on your team and have specific roles and have a strategy, have an overall. I mean, we change our strategy. It doesn't stay the same every year. The strategy is sort of the bigger picture, the style that we're going to adopt. Are we going to be more aggressive on offense? Are we going to be a little bit more passive? Are we going to try to strike more from a sort of a tactical defensive posture? That's sort of the strategy, right? That encompasses the overall style of play. And then you have very specific plays, right? That specific people are assigned to do in specific situations. So all of those things doesn't just kind of fall from the sky. It doesn't happen naturally. The natural talent is something that, happens, from the get-go. You have players that have great arms, that are just athletic, that come, with baseball backgrounds and can do specific things really well. But this sort of cohesiveness that I think a lot of these older teams have is something that can only come with time. And so hopefully these teams stick around, because, the more competition, the better this thing's going to get. Going back to, going back to Heat, as you mentioned, I think they're going to, they do come from a foam background, but, they're showing up to the elite more regularly. And so I have, there's no doubt in my mind that if they stick to it, they're going to be one of the top contenders. I think Isidro's moving to San Diego, so we're gonna hold them hostage and have them play 8.5 regularly on Sundays.
Is that so? Thanks for the tip. I'll keep that in mind when I see him next week.
Yeah. He doesn't like it, but it's gonna happen.
Well, he would be in good hands if that's the case. But I kind of wanted to not read off, but there were a couple other mentions in this article, and you can kind of add to that if anybody stands out in your mind. But some of the other standout performances were Daniel Ronk out of Havoc, from Tucson, which always makes me happy. Even though I live in Phoenix, I'm still happy to see Tucson show up in some form. Arsenal's Maddox Helmrich. Yeah. He was. Is he from? I have to check, but was he formerly from the Bay Area?
From the Bay Area, yeah. He's a stud. He's an upcoming player, and he did great.
Yeah, he was. I'm sure he was really helpful for Arsenal. And then I did already mention Marcus. How about on your end, just either playing alongside with or against? Did you notice anybody that really stood out and kind of gave you a run for your money, or just, wow, that guy's looking really good, or he's throwing really hard, or catching phenomenally?
So just kind of going through the list you just mentioned, Ronk, came with fire. We did not want to get hit by that guy, and we were getting hit by that guy. He was teeing off on our team. I think Havoc was the only team that beat us in round robin, and in large part due to Ronk's fire. Wow. He was just hitting us right center in the chest and hard, and so we had to, we had to figure him out. We had to get that, and we did it at the end of the day because they beat us in round robin. That was the only team that beat us, and so I think it was correct of Tyler's post to sort of put a spotlight on him. I think he did very well. The other players, Maddox, great catching, very patient player, and so I think he also had a really good showing. I didn't get a chance to see too much of Arsenal's play, but but I've seen Maddox play before, and I just think he's an all-around good player. He's an up-and-coming. He wants to learn. He's hungry. And then who else did you mention?
Did you say Marcus?
Oh, Marcus,
Westbrook,
yeah. So he played well. He also had a really. I think all of those players on that team had a really good game. When we played them, they just kind of, put us on our toes. It was a really strategic match. They were doing some new things we hadn't seen before, and it was sort of affecting our rhythm. And so props to all of the players on Gridlock. One player that wasn't mentioned in Tyler's article, specifically in Open, right? I'm assuming we're still focusing on Open.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was Lukas. He did some exceptional plays. There was one play that he did against us. It wasn't necessarily a play. It was just something that he did. We had a play, actually, that we were executing on his team, and he just stopped it, dead in its tracks, and ruined everything.
He just said no.
He caught me point blank, and then he pushed past Tim, and Tim was like, wait, you're out. And he pointed at Lukas, and he said, you're out. And Tim didn't see him get hit, but Tim understood the way it should have worked, right?
Right.
And the play is like, it should be like 99% success rate, and Lukas managed to squeeze that 1% out somehow magically. But he looked at Lukas and he said, you're out. And then he looked at me, and I was shaking my head. I was like, no, he caught me.
Wow.
And so he just ruined that play. And so anyway, I think that wasn't the only moment I saw him doing cool stuff. I saw him catching a lot and throwing, and so he's a really exciting. I get really excited to see him play. I think he's just genuinely having fun out there, and at the same time strategic in what he's doing. And I really tip my hat to the fact that he's bringing out a new team for the elite. He left a really good team. And I also like the fact that the team is, centrally located in one city. I think that's going to help them out in developing, this cohesiveness that is so important. The more they play together, the better they're going to get. And so that's great. I think he was another player that should be highlighted. I think he had an exceptional tournament.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was going to say, you said your play had a 99% success rate, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I guess that's maybe I'm embellishing a little bit, but it's supposed to work
most of the time. I was gonna say your 1% was you didn't factor in a Lucas, so he's the 1% that shut it down.
Yeah, he's that 1%. He's up there with the bankers.
Well, speaking of Lucas, if people are interested in learning more about him, it looks like David Tates is back to doing his Book of Dodgeball podcast. So if people want to maybe get into the mind of Lucas, that's a perfect real quick shout out to Tates and his podcast, and being able to see what makes him. So he the few plays I saw him do, he was either just dodging really awesomely, doing a catch here or there, or throwing pretty hard for somebody of his stature. So it was I'm not surprised that he would have as big of an impact on Fortune as he has, and we'll see what happens with Rainbows. I know that's a great team also, and looking at some of the teams that didn't make it to the top 5, like Titan and Riot.
Rainbow.
Yeah, and maybe they just had an off day. That was another thing that I think I noticed Ketchum said on Facebook was just today's a weird day. And we won't necessarily go into co-ed because that's what Monique will hopefully cover, but I'm curious to see like how that played out, and if people really did have an off day, or if it was just, I don't want to say first whole jitters, but like first day of back to school, like we're a little rusty and trying to figure out our ways before we really get into full gear here. But yeah, it's awesome stuff all around. Going back to Titan though, it was really awesome watching Justin Acton come back and just seeing that kid hasn't missed a beat at all. He was throwing so much heat, and when I saw him, he was just playing like the Justin Acton that I remember from back in the Evil days when he was playing really well. So there's a ton of people showed up, and it was just excitement all around. And
yeah, he was another guy that gave us trouble with his throw. Him and Bronk in particular. Acton was just throwing fire, and his ball has movement on it.
It's sick. Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird though because, well, I don't want to give out a secret, publicly and sort of have it work against him. But there is a way you can get away from it. But the trajectory is just so to a certain extent unpredictable. And so yeah, he it was great to see that he was, playing at full force, back after I don't know how long he's been gone.
It's been a minute. I mean, he was out all last year, and that's as far back as I can remember. I don't think he was with us when I was with Titan in 2016. So it's been a while, but whatever he's doing, it's obviously keeping him in dodgeball shape. So
yeah,
it's great to see that he's just as fierce and also hilarious as he's always been. Let me see. I don't think there was any other shout outs that Tyler specifically mentioned. And off the top of my head, I think we covered.
Well, I can't think of anything. I mean, you mentioned Titan and Rainbows, and two notable players missing from both teams were Casey Moses for Titan.
Oh yeah, it wasn't there.
So I'm wondering if maybe that had an effect on their play. Casey's a great player, so I'm sure they were, in one way or another affected in some way, by not having him there.
Yeah, maybe not as many regens as Casey would normally provide.
Yeah.
But on that note, I will say the few times I saw Titan play, I saw Israel Bentley just going ham on people, and he was catching a lot, which is awesome because like I mean, I've always seen him catch balls, but he's not known for catching, and he knows it, and he's admitted to it many times. Like, he's more of a blocker, survivalist type player. So factor in the fact that he's really hard to hit, very fast, very good at blocking, and now he can catch. It's like, well, cool, just make it that much harder for us, Izzy. But yeah. I did see that happen, so who knows? Maybe Casey's absence caused Izzy to step up in catching more, or maybe if Casey was there, he could have brought back in catch him, because I'm sure everybody and their mother was gunning for him at all times. I even saw Dave Benedetto's crazy suicide, but not quite a suicide. Like, did you? I got to see that firsthand reffing, and then I also got to see the Instagram replay, and there was no need to jump in the air and suicide. I guess Dave was just being super Dave, or
it's Dave. You have to do whatever you're doing with flair, if you're going to be Dave, or else it just wouldn't be right.
It had the flair, and it had if you freeze frame it, it's like a really cool looking potential picture. Like, I would almost even say that should be like the backdrop of not the Elite logo, but you could get away with a pretty intense looking silhouette if you blacked it out. But God, that was
yeah. I think he's up up in the runnings for the next Elite logo.
That'd be a great legacy for him. Yeah, he's freaking Dave.
Yeah.
I don't think I can recall anybody else that stood out any more than they already have, or any more than you would already expect.
Who also had a really good game? And I don't recall if it was in co-ed or open, but Alan from Rain Bros, I remember seeing him do some really exciting stuff. I saw him just catching like a beast, point blank at times, and just always being very alert and quick with the trigger too. Like, really nice throws that were low, hitting people's ankles. I think this was in co-ed, but it was in co-ed that he hit Jim, who he called his what did he call him? His idol, or his hero on Facebook. Hit him in the ankles on the back pedal off the rush, and it was just so quick and it was so accurate. But I think he was consistently doing very well in open, since we are sort of focusing on open, and so I think that's another person who may need a shout out. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an all around good player. He's definitely not somebody you want to take your eye off of ever.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, good stuff. It's man, I had such excitement driving to Elite, and I was like, oh man, I want this to last forever. This is exciting. I can't believe I'm going. And I just talked to Glenn on the podcast, and we talked about like how back in the day we'd show up to a tournament that we don't know if it's even going to happen, or we don't know how many teams are going to be there. But just knowing that the best of the best are coming out, it's for sure going to happen. You have amazing people running it like Jake Mason, and that the people behind the scenes have your, as a player, best interest in mind. The venue's going to be there. The teams are going to show up. Your team's going to show up. You guys are going to look really good. You have like refs that are that actually give a crap because they have to, because they had to take tests to do so. It's just so exciting, and it just kind of bums me out that we got to wait another month and a half. So it's like, well, what do I do till then other than practice? But
yeah, I want to do it every month.
Yeah, right. Like at least my body will get used to it. But with that being said, next month or next Elite, is there anything that you'd be willing to divulge that you guys are gonna take back and work on? And the reason why I asked that is because obviously you took second, and I kind of caught Jim walking away saying, it's the same old thing. There's just some kind of mental block that you guys have to get through. Again, without trying to divulge and dig too much into your strategy, can you kind of share what that might look like? So maybe other people who are listening can take a note from your book there.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as you mentioned, without getting into the details of like the plays and the strategy, we do have some new plays and a new strategy that we've been working on and talking about, and it works really well. And I think what happened with us and what you heard Jim say, I think is, right on the money. There is sort of a mental block against the team, against our match, against Doom. And in the finals, I think we had like a total of like 6 like just mental mistakes. And that's bad. That's bad. That's way too many. Games are determined often by just one mental mistake. And so, we've always been, a team that has, shot for, perfection on the court without mental mistakes. And of course that doesn't happen. But in matches it can. And so, as long as you stick with the strategy and with the plays and do everything as best as you can and don't, step outside of the box and do too much and make mental mistakes like stepping over a line or just throwing you're not supposed to, or getting rushed in certain situations, even if you lose, you still don't feel like you did bad, and you put up a fight. But something just we did well the entire round robin. We did well through bracket, and then in the finals we just kind of pooped the bed. Too many mental mistakes.
Right.
And so I think moving forward, what we're going to do is just stay very focused on what we need to do, continue practicing the strategy and the plays we've been working on for a long time, stay committed to it and sort of buy into the system and continue practicing as a unit, and then go from there. Next time around, we don't anticipate having such a poor showing in the finals. I think that was one of our not so great showings in the finals. And so we'll turn it around. We're optimistic that we're going to do what we need to do in order to come back and give up a better fight.
For sure. And I think that might echo a lot of what the other teams might be facing right now. It's okay, let's think about where we went wrong, the things we actually could help, and let's practice and let's step up. And I know that's definitely happening with the Arizona teams. We're all kind of, I don't want to say secretly talking to each other, but we're talking amongst ourselves on how we can procure a gym so that way we can have an elite specific practice. Because like it's one thing to play foam with other rec players and no sting and whatnot, but to be able to contend now the way we want to, we have to do practices. We have to get our guys together and get used to whatever nuances we need to get out of the way, so that way we have a much stronger showing for round 2. And it's really awesome to kind of see and be a part of those conversations with Arizona, because we used to be a powerhouse back in the good old days, and we want to bring that back. And I'm sure every other team feels the exact same way. So we're all kind of maybe dealing with the loss of elite dodgeball right now with let's get prepared for the next one. And so that's one way to kind of fill the void, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone mentioned it. I think it's this new team. This what's the name of the team? The women's division, Love Tap. So someone from Love Tap posted this wonderful post that said something to the effect of, what it takes is hard work, and they had these high ambitions, but at the same time we're trying to be realistic about what they were going to be able to do the first time they competed, but they worked really hard, and at the end of the day it paid dividends.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think at the end of the day, being serious about it, the hard work, trying to figure out what you did wrong, did right, and then coming back, putting up a fight next round.
Yep, that's the great thing is practice, and then there's always next time. There's always tomorrow, but for us, tomorrow is 6 weeks away, so plenty of time to get in shape, to go run, to hit the gym, to do the things you need to do to get in better optimal performance. And it'll be interesting to see of these teams, where they end up during the next rankings once the points are released.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the points are going to be all over the place. I'm not so sure if this layout that we have after round one is going to stick.
Right.
And I guess this sort of speaks to the dogfight point Tyler made in his article. I think it's going to be a little bit more up in the air than we may expect. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if the points were kind of all over the place and everything was up for grabs by the end of the actual season.
That's yeah, I'm expecting the same thing. I mean, last year, I think the top three teams set the tone for the rest of the season. Same thing with the year prior and so forth. But yeah, I agree 100%. I think we should screenshot what the rankings look like and then compare them during the last after the last elite and see who's moved up and who's fallen behind and who took this the practice thing to heart. We'll find out real soon who's working hard and who's coasting. So it's gonna be exciting, and I'm glad you did bring up Love Tap. They are hopefully we'll have a Crystal Briones for part 3.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into co-ed with Monique Aguilar. So that's going to be hopefully a pretty thorough covering. But as far as Open goes, I definitely appreciate your input, man. It was a great tournament all around. Again, huge thank you to Jake Mason for helping run the thing and Mark for his vision, as well as Vince. I just it's incredible. I'm so grateful that this is happening in my lifetime as a dodgeball player. And it's really cool to be able to kind of rap back and forth with someone like yourself who's been with it as long as I have, because we can really see, like, man, to go from cahoots and to go from U of A dodgeball to this is it's been quite a journey, and it's just it gets better every single day. So I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it's truly amazing, Steve. I'll just sort of echo everything you said. Thanks to everyone who has made this thing happen. It's just truly incredible. And then also give yourself a pat on the back, Steve, because this, in its own way is also, as I've mentioned in the past, big contribution. So thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I guess I'll see you soon.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, we'll move on to part 2. So that was the recap for the Open Division. And thank you so much, Serge, for hopping on and lending your perspective and input on what took place that weekend. Clearly, there's a lot to cover. So in part 2, we're going to go ahead and take on the co-ed division with Monique Aguilar.